Cześć, nazywam się Sasha Tomen i jestem w połowie Polką. Hello, my name is Sasha Tomen. I am half Pole. But what exactly does it mean to be Polish? Does it mean that I am blessed with a divine drinking strength that makes me swallow vodka like water, while others have to swallow deeply after the second cup? Does it mean that in case of a coming world war, I seem to have the unique gift of losing my country within a few weeks? Or does it simply mean that half of my own being was lost somewhere between Russia and Germany? If that is the case, I would like to have that half back again. If you have only understood half of what I'm trying to tell you, let me make something clear to you. Every one of us has a genetic lineage like that. Arif has ancestors from Turkey, Raquel is from Spain, Jurit's mother spent her childhood in Norway. And everyone is asking themselves, what is Swiss about me? What is foreigner? Where do I stand? Since everyone answers this question personally, there is already a great diversity among the different people. But there are people for whom it is too complicated. To simplify complicated connections, that is racism. In certain areas, it hangs like a dark thunderstorm over the heads of people who have to live with the constant certainty that it can discharge itself at any moment over the head of a certain type of person. Cześć, nazywam się Sasha Tomen and ask me, is racism necessary at all? In order to understand what we are talking about at all, there follows a, in my opinion, very fitting answer to the question, what is racism, by Johannes Zerger. He wrote, in 1997, roughly summarized, that we classify people as a group of people on the basis of their origin and provide them with collective characteristics that are not interpreted as such or are difficult to change. So the Pole becomes a drunkard. So the Italian becomes a mama's boy. So the Eritrean becomes a social parasite who, for purely cultural reasons, cannot work. At this moment, we are all faced with the same question. Why are we doing this? We can answer this question, at least historically, with one of the first pure racists in our world, Christopher Columbus. Columbus, who had just discovered America in 1491, or at least was traveling, soon realized that the natives of this other continent were a different kind of people than those he was used to. The natives lived with nature, not against it. The natives lived for themselves, while Europe was striving to expand. A genocide does not just happen. It needs an explanation. This was roughly stated very early on. Our people are more progressive, more Christian, better than the indigenous, and we save these uncultivated subhumans by teaching them the Christian faith. As we all know, it was pitiful that many of them, along with illness, slavery, and countless empty promises, were finally brought closer to death. In Europe, no collective indignation at a crime, a mass murder, against their own scientific and biological species, the Homo sapiens sapiens. In principle, a mass murder against oneself by the Latin translated, wise, reasonable, intelligent people. The racial images of primitive, inferior natives, as well as enlightened, superior Spaniards, have settled in the minds of the people. Racial images based on inferiority characteristics like the red skin of the natives. Racism worked historically for the first time. The same, or at least a similar principle of pseudo-biological racism was used to justify colonialism, slavery, the crimes of the Nazis, or apartheid regimes. And here it is slowly becoming clear why racism is such an incredibly difficult issue. We are all citizens of Europe, drowning in its own abundance, who can no longer see the surface of the lake, while many people from the third world countries try to climb Maslow's steep rocky pyramid piece by piece with their last ounce of strength in a relentless struggle of existential fears and worst conditions, while we took the lift. So we should be expected to act spiritually as people who have had most of their basics needs fulfilled from birth in the cradle. No, we should expect ourselves to look back on history and try to learn from this inhuman attitude. But if man has proved anything historically, it is that he usually learns little or nothing from his mistakes. A prime example of this is the German parliamentary party leader of the AfD in the Thuringian parliament, Björn Höcke. Höcke, the history teacher who has been on leave since 2014 due to his activity as a member of the state parliament, is known for presenting unvarnished racist as well as anti-Semitic contents in a rhetoric that partly corresponds one-to-one as to the Nazi rhetoric from the time of the Second World War. Thus, he uses the common fighting terms of the Nazi era, such as thousand-year Germany, spoiler of the people, or degenerate, to illustrate his folkish worldview, which will probably not slip unconsciously over the knowing lips of a former history teacher. Asked about his rhetoric, which is clearly binding in history, Höcke shows himself to be a minority that has the courage to use a poetic, extraordinary language that does not correspond to social formalism. In Germany, freedom of expression is an important value in the minds of everyone. At the moment, rights and racists are getting away en masse with this legal tightrope walk between agitation and freedom of opinion. This is how racism works today. Young people, and we all are, know the older generation is dependent on young people. One day, this world will be in our hands, in the hands of a generation full of hope. Hope for a world full of individuals, not races. In the hands of a generation that will hopefully see racism for what it is. An old, dusty human illusion based on false claims or accusations. We live in a time when climate movements around the world are demanding that we finally develop an awareness of what is important, the scientific truth. We live in a time in which thousands of refugees set off on a journey into the unknown to flee to Europe. The situation on all our planet is too serious and it is wrong to hide behind pseudo-scientific discrimination techniques just because it's so incredibly cozy and easy to lump everyone together. We must finally learn to work together as human beings to meet our future challenges. We must stop putting problems on ethnic groups and lose sight of the real problems. Demography, lower labor costs in third world countries, pension problems, climate change, digitalization, rural exodus. Today is the day for us to get up. Today is the day for us to throw off and burn the blood-stained cloak of the racial illusion of ourselves. Today is the day for us to see man and not the image associated with him. And I ask you, no, I see it as our human moral duty to help the mentally weaker. Let us not reject the racists and anti-Semites. Let us try to break down the hateful pseudo-reality with them, to build them up as human beings, and to form them strong enough for reality. Even if it's merciless, hard, and cruel. The only two things that connect all human beings are death and reality. Let's not lose the later to forkate. Szczęść nazywam się Sasha Toman, and I ask you, is racism even necessary? Yes, but only if it's necessary for you.